know the Quran with tajweed, with correct pronunciation, and in our salah, if we are praying any nafil salah, any farz salah, we are reading the Quran wrong. Some of us, we will find that even if we go to a gathering where we are reading Quran, we will be reading the Quran wrong. Wherever we go, we are reading the Quran wrong. And our Shaykh has said many times that reading the Quran incorrectly, even if it's a zabr, even if you turn a zabr, a fatha into a dhamma, a zabr into a zair, even that, it could go to such an extent where it is deemed as kufr. That even if you make the smallest mistake, not every single time you make a small, but there could be a time where you're reading the Quran, and if you pronounce that specific word, that specific letter wrong, it could be deemed as kufr. So it is so important. We cannot stress on how important it is to read the Quran with correct pronunciation. If we don't know how to read the Quran with correct tajweed, Almighty Allah has given us time. I said this before. Almighty Allah has given us time. Take that time out and start to learn the Quran with tajweed. Whether you go to a teacher, there's no age to stop learning ilm. There is no age where you have to stop reading Quran. Reading Quran does not stop at the age of a teenager. You can be 40, you can be 60, you can be 80 and you are learning the Quran. It doesn't matter. There's so many stories of people in their 70s, they are completing Hifzul Quran. So no one can say that we do not have enough time to take 15 minutes, to go to the mosque, to go to the masjid for 20 minutes a day, and to just learn from the Imam how to read the Quran with correct tajweed. It may take a long time, but as long as you have started your process, your journey into learning the Quran, how to pronounce it correctly, that's what matters. And if we truly wish to love the Quran, we will take our time out. If we have that intention that I want to fall in love with the Quran, I want to connect with the Quran, I want to connect with our salah, then we will also make sure that we take time out to learn the Quran, to learn the Quran's tajweed, to learn the tartil without haste, and to learn the Quran melodiously. If we have an important business deal, or if we have an important contract with a certain business, and we have a meeting, what will we do? We will make sure that in that meeting, we are amazing, we are perfect in our speaking. If we want to close a business deal, what are we going to do? We're going to make sure that we're wearing a nice suit. We're going to make sure that when we're speaking to the person, we are speaking with adab, with respect. When we are speaking to the person, we want to make sure that our English, it is as formal as possible. Or if it's in another language, we're speaking that language in the most formal way possible. Why? Because you want to close the business deal. If you make this business deal, you'll be rich. You'll have never-ending money. In the same way, Almighty Allah, just reading the Quran in itself gives you rewards. Connecting with the Quran, I mentioned the ni'mas of connecting with the Quran, that you will have dunya and you will have akhirah. And that's what we want. All of us want. We want a nice house. We want nice clothes. But we also want Jannatul Firdaus. And as I said, the easiest way to do that is to connect yourself with the Quran. Now, how insulting is it that Almighty Allah gives us 8 hours a day to work? Almighty Allah gives us a few days. Almighty Allah gives us a few hours to eat, a couple hours to eat in a day. Your breakfast, your lunch and your dinner. Almighty Allah gives us a few hours to sleep. Almighty Allah gives us a few hours to enjoy, to watch TV, to play with your children, to go out with your friends, to go out with your family. But Almighty Allah giving you all that time, Almighty Allah giving you all that money, that rizq, that sustenance, Almighty Allah giving you so much, but you don't take your time out to learn the Quran. How insulting is that? Imagine you went into a meeting, a work meeting, and you were wearing scruffy clothes. Imagine you went into the most important business meeting of your life, and you're wearing dirty clothes, and you haven't combed your hair, and you're speaking your English, you're speaking slang, do you think that person's going to close the business deal with you? If you're looking the most scruffy, if you're not speaking in a respectful manner, do you think the person is going to close the business deal with you? No, of course not. Why? Because you're not giving the right adab. Now, if we go to learn the Quran, or we read the Quran incorrectly, without tajweed, how insulting is it that Almighty Allah gives us so many ni'mas, but we don't even take 10 minutes a day to learn the Quran properly? To learn how to read the Quran properly? This is something that all of us should be reflecting on. Whether we know how to read the Quran with tajweed or not, that have we taken enough time out to learn the Quran? It doesn't matter what we're doing. Some of us, our tajweed might be perfect, but our tartil, our fluency in reading the Quran is not perfect. How many of us have gone on to learning how to read the Quran fluently? Many of us, also, the Prophet ﷺ said that such a person that recites the Quran and masters it by heart will be with the noble righteous people in heaven. And such a person who exerts himself to learn the Quran by heart and recites it with great difficulty will have double the reward. If you're reading the Quran, if you're learning the Quran how to read it with tajweed, and you just can't get it right, or it's taking you months just to get one simple tajweed rule right, remember this hadith, that person who reads the Quran with great difficulty, he is getting double the reward. Double the reward as the person who's reading it fluently, who's reading it correctly with tajweed. This should be a motivation for us, that we know whether we can read the Quran with tajweed or not. We know ourselves. I'm not asking anyone to put their hands up, but we know ourselves. Now, if you take